Welcome back, everybody, to the Atari 7800 Pro-Am Golf Tournament. We're going to continue our coverage with hole number 3, where Charlie Chuck is attempting a putt for birdie. Let's see how he does. Oh, sorry about that, Chuck. Just as the ball was about to go in the hole, Zorba, the chef, popped out, deflecting it. All right, let's take you to hole number 6. We have a little bit of controversy brewing. Dig Dug hit a shot. It landed on an ant mound. He is now arguing with the ref, Figar, that he shouldn't have to play the ball off the ant mound since ants are burrowing animals. However, ref Figar is disagreeing with him. And it looks like Dig Dug is reaching for something, and now he's bringing out his air hose. Nothing good can come of this. I expect Mr. Dig Dug will be getting a phone call from the golf commissioner shortly. All right, on to hole 11, where Dr. J is about to tee off. Ooh, what power, but that slice is going right into the parking lot. Somebody is not going to be happy when they go back to their car. And now let's go to 18, where our leader, Agent 4125, who just came off a thrilling victory at the British Open, is about to complete a record-setting round. And what's this? It looks like the plane from Ace of Aces. It's making its way to the hole as well. What will happen? Oh dear, the plane just blew up the final hole. It looks like Agent 4125 will not be able to complete this game after all. We're going to take a short commercial break as we sort this out.
On today's episode of the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast, we will be covering CX7846 Ace of Aces and CX7847 Mean 18 Ultimate Golf. And stay tuned for one of the greatest listener feedback segments ever. There will be songs, and tantrums, and so much more. So come on in to the polka dot door.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast right here on the Satellite of Pro. My name is Phil, and I will be your host this evening. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Get the Ball David for winning the Seagull 78 adapter. He won the drawing for my last listener of the months, plural, and that is what he selected. But I have another one to give away. So if you're interested in getting the wonderful Ed Ladin Seagull 78 adapter, which allows you to use Sega Genesis controllers with 2-button Atari 7800 games. You can always use a Sega Genesis controller for 1-button games, but if you want to use the dual buttons, you'll need to get one of these amazing adapters. If you want to win one, all you have to do is keep on sending text or audio submissions or leave a review on iTunes. Either way, that will get you an entry, and if you send me an audio submission, that counts as 2. And you can earn up to 2 entries per episode plus a bonus entry if you do the iTunes review. All right, who else do I need to congratulate? That's right, I need to congratulate listener Christian, who has decided to launch a new podcast, the Atari Lynx Game by Game podcast. That's a great name, really catchy, which is very exciting. Looking forward to that. And that's amazing because now we have the Atari 2600, 5200, 7800, the Jag, and the Lynx all covered as far as the home systems go. And there's also a lot of computer podcasts out there as well for you guys to check. I'm not much of a computer guy, but I do hope to get an Atari XE system one of these days so I can check it out. I have never played an Atari 8-bit or XE computer game. I know, shame on me. But the Atari Lynx Game by Game podcast should be launching soon. You can also like him over at Facebook. Be sure to do that. You know, I don't think that there's any big Phil effect, but I'll say this. It's really interesting that for a while, Ferg was the only guy on the block as far as the home systems go. And then at the beginning of the year, I started the 7800 Game by Game podcast. And within months, all of a sudden, the 5200 Game by Game podcast came out. Shinto started the Jag one, and now Christian's starting the Lynx one. If there's a Phil effect, it's this. These guys heard the job I was doing, and they said to themselves, I can do better than that guy. Are you kidding me? What have I been waiting for? I can top that. And they decided to start their own. I almost wonder, you know, Ferg does such a great job with the 2600. If people were scared to kind of follow in his footsteps, and it just took somebody to break the ice, and then someone to do such a put the bar kind of low so that other people can enter. I'm like, I can do that. Come on. So if there's a Phil effect, there it is right there. So anyway, go check out Christian on Facebook and be sure to subscribe on iTunes or whatever other feed that he has out to the Atari Links Game by Game podcast. Do have some corrections to issue. First of all, Bill Kendrick over on my Twitter, where you can find me at, I think it's at the No Swear Gamer, maybe just No Swear Gamer, maybe the "the's" not in there. Not quite sure. I should know that. Anyways, Bill Kendrick corrected me. Apparently, when I covered Bruderbund, he said I gave the wrong year for Print Shop. He let me know that Print Shop actually started in 1984, and which makes sense. I know it's been around forever, so I must have had a later year. I don't know, wherever I got that info, maybe it was going with like a relaunch version of Print Shop. I don't know, but the year was wrong. 1984 sounds right to me. And also, I don't know who it was, but someone on YouTube, there was one episode where I talked about pack-ins. I talked about the Wii having a poor ratio as far as games to systems go, and said that it was actually not that bad by the end. I think he gave me the number of 8-1. I can't find the numbers on ratios of systems to games. If anyone knows of a site where you can find out how many games are sold per system, I mean, spanning generations, that would be fascinating to look at. And if I'm wrong about the Wii, I sincerely apologize. Of course, I think some of that might be children's shovelware. There's a lot of kids games based on properties that came out for the Wii, and a lot of kind of budget titles, so that may have helped pad the numbers. Of course, things like Super Smash Brothers sold a bunch, and Mario Kart as well. A lot of Wii owners would get that as well. But it was sad as a Wii, and by the way, I like the Wii, but it was sad as far as the Nintendo Wii to see big publishers like Electronic Arts kind of slowly pull out, and big titles kind of get skipped over and just go to PS3 and the Xbox 360 instead of the Wii. So the Wii is definitely an interesting system, and I am a fan, but I do wish it had more support when it was out. Another thing I want to talk about real quickly is I went back and I played some more Commando on the Atari 7800. I had a few people say two things, if I remember correctly, from the last episode. One was that they had trouble sometimes going in different directions, and then the other was about slowdown, and I said I didn't notice any. Well, I played it again. First of all, yes, I noticed some slowdown when there is a lot of activity on screen. So this is especially like at the end of the levels when you're at a base and all the bad guys are spewing out the doors and they're coming from every side and there's a lot of bullets on screen. It does slow down. I didn't notice any flicker. When that happened, but I did notice a little bit of slowdown during those instances until you cleared a couple of the extra guys. So yes, there is a little slowdown. As far as the controller goes, I still have no problems with it. I think maybe it's my setup. It's because I'm using the Ed Ladin Seagull 78 adapter with a Sega Genesis 6-button controller. Maybe if you're using a different joystick, it's tougher. I don't know. Maybe the Proline controller is more sensitive if you're using that. I had no problem at all changing directions. I don't know if it's just me, but as far as my setup goes, it worked great for me. Finally, a little message to Georgie Vip from the Intel Visionaries podcast. Voice and I heard what you had to say about the Atari 7800. And we will be responding soon. Well, maybe soon. We might pull in Intellivisionaries, which means you'll have to wait 1 to 2 months. And when you do get the response, it'll be 2 to 3 hours long. We need to do a deep dive in a response on the Atari 7800, or maybe not. We will see. So I think that wraps up just about everything. So let's go ahead and get to today's games.
How's it going, everybody? This is Christian from the Atari Links Game by Game podcast, and you're listening to Phil the No Swear Gamer on the 7800 Game by Game podcast. Sit back, relax, and get your fill of the 7800. I couldn't resist, I'm sorry.
You are so embarrassing. I can't believe I had to work with this.
Both of today's games were originally computer games published by Accolade here in the States. Now, Accolade was founded in 1984 by Alan Miller and Bob Whitehead, who previously left Atari to help form Activision. So they left one company and then they left another, and they keep on forming companies. Once again, the phone book rumor pops up here. According to the rumor, Activision picked its name to appear above Atari in a phone book, which would list companies in alphabetical order. Then Accolade would do the same to Activision, which would be followed by Acclaim doing the same thing, and then Absolute following suit, and all those companies have tied to Activision. Early on, Accolade focused on publishing games for the various computers of that time. Two of their earliest titles included the early flight simulator, The Dam Busters, which would later appear on the ColecoVision, and Sundog Frozen Legacy, an early influential space trading game. 1985 would bring Hardball, and 1987 would bring Test Drive, two games that would eventually lead to popular long-running series for Accolade. As the NES and Sega Genesis gained popularity, Accolade began to enter the home system market, with most of their focus going towards the Sega Genesis to begin with. Game companies who made systems would often make money through licensing and selling other game companies basic packaging and cartridge shells. Accolade decided to go on its own, so they reversed engineered the Sega Genesis, and their games came in their own style of cardboard boxes and their own cartridges. Eventually, this would lead to Sega suing Accolade. Sega initially won the suit and forced Accolade to pull their Genesis games off of store shelves, but on appeal, Accolade would actually win. Sega wanted to have a rehearing, but eventually Sega and Accolade would come to an agreement which would make Accolade an official licensee, though the financial details of this agreement have never been revealed. Around the same time and before the lawsuit started, Accolade published many Genesis games under the name Ballistics instead of Accolade. This may have been to help in legal protection and to avoid limitations often put on companies like Nintendo on how many games a publisher could make. In 1993, Accolade began the Sonic the Hedgehog-inspired Bubsy series of video games. With a lot of hype and some good but not great reviews, the Bubsy series had a solid start, but over time the series and gamers' opinions on it eroded. Nowadays, the Bubsy series is seen in a very negative light, probably more than it really deserves. A little trivia here about Bubsy. In a recent year, a listener of the Retro League podcast named Phenomenal Phil won a copy of Bubsy for the Sega Genesis from one of the hosts, Jungle Rat Rob. This copy would eventually be used and reviewed to launch the No Swear Gamer series of videos on YouTube. Now, Bob Whitehead would leave the company early on. He decided that even though games were fun, that it was time to put first things first and give back to God and family. I wouldn't be surprised if his work in gaming consumed an insane amount of time. In an interview with Digital Press, he talked about working for charitable causes and spending time gardening. Alan Miller would work for Accolade for 10 years, leave the company in 1994. When the 90s started, Accolade did pretty well, but they pretty much started suffering as time went on. And in 1999, they were purchased by French publisher Infogrames, who would later, or I think the S is silent, Infogram, who would later buy the rights and rename themselves Atari. So the company, formed by two guys who left Atari to became a later version of Atari, and that's just a short history on Accolade. Ace of Aces was released for computers in 1986 and would become Accolade's second best-selling all-time game on the Commodore 64. And it was pretty highly regarded when it came out. It came to the Atari 7800 probably in 1988. The box on it features the Mosquito airplane or jet or bomber, however you want to say it, the fighter airplane, on the cover. And basically, to me, it looks like, I don't know if you remember, there's people who collect insects, and when they get an insect, they put it in like a shadow box, like they pin the wings of like a butterfly or dragonfly, whatever they're collecting. They pin the wings down, and so you have like this view of a flattened insect. And that's what this Mosquito kind of reminds me of, this plane. It looks like its wings have been pinned up because it's a top-down view. So you can see the top of its wings, you can see the cockpit and the propellers, all like you're flying right over it. And underneath it, there are some clouds and a blue sky. And it says Ace of Aces in red, bold letters at the top, and by Accolade in very tiny letters right underneath that. And on the back, it says hair-raising combat. Ace of Aces puts you in the cockpit of the Mosquito, the Maverick RAF fighter bomber of World War II. It's a white-knuckle aerial combat simulation, combining the exhilaration of flight with the gut-wrenching pressure of enemy confrontation. During World War II, Mosquitoes downed 659 enemy aircraft and 500 V-1 Buzz bombs. All right, Buzz bombs? Is that supposed to be bombers? Your only allies are your wits, your weapons, and your radar. Are you equal to the challenge? Down the Nazi bombers, sink the U-boats, outrun the V-1 Buzz bombs, and stop the enemy trains to release the POWs. Should you fly through a storm or around? Navigate carefully, consult your intelligence reports and maps to make a decision. Choose your weapons and fuel wisely. Once you're on a mission, there's no going back. Select one mission or any combination. If you complete all 4 successfully and make it back alive, you'll become the most distinguished flight veteran of World War II, the Ace of Aces. And it says 4 different missions for 1 player for use with the 7800 Pro line controllers and for the 7800 series systems. And the manual, as you would expect, is your basic red, white, and black. And it kind of looks kind of cool, I think, because it gives you like this feeling that it's nighttime because of the colors. It changes it. I don't know if you remember, there was a show, this anthology show in the 80s called Tales from the Dark Side, that they would show like a picture, a regular picture, a video of just, scenery in the daytime. But then they would show you the negative of it. So like if you had old film, you had the negative, it was like the dark colors, and it gave it a more serious, kind of a scary, terror-filled feeling. And the Ace of Aces manual, the cover of it, the blue skies are now black, dark as night, and it just gives it a more serious feel to it. I actually think I prefer the manual cover to the box cover, but that just might be me. If you've been following the show, I've started to really warm up to these red, white, and black colorings on the manuals. And the manual is very long. I want to say it's like 16 pages long, stapled manual. And I won't go over every part of it, but I will go over some. The introduction says, "Trump that ace," and it's World War II, and the Britain's Royal Air Force is up to its neck in Axis attacks. As one of the RAF's RAFs, did I say that right? Yeah. Most aggressive pilots, you are on flying the most crucial mission to stall the enemy. They attack by land, air, and sea. Your only allies are your de Havilland Mosquito. Your weapons and your wits: chase the Nazi bombers, sink the U-boats before they can dive, outrun the V-1 Buzz bombers, and stop the POW trains from reaching the enemy lines. Choose your ammunition and fuel wisely. Once you're on a mission, there's no turning back. Well, you can turn back, but then your game's over. To be an ace, you need 4 enemy defeats. To be the Ace of Aces, you got to be the best. And then it just goes on to tell you how you can go ahead and start up your system. Playing the game, practice. If you choose, now when you start the game, you can choose practice or mission. So practice, you could choose 3 alternatives. You have a dogfight where you go nose to nose with enemy ME-109s and whacks their tails. The train, where you practice bombing the enemy rail system. U-boat, where you cruise over the North Atlantic for a dry run on a wet target. And then it just tells you to go ahead and select which one you want. Man your Mosquito. It's already loaded with the necessary ammunition and fuel in the practice mode. Now it's time to practice destroying the enemy. When your plane sustains damage or runs low on ammo or fuel, return to base. Use practice flight to learn your aircraft and its controls. Once you're back on base, you'll be called again to group captain's pre-dawn session. And I would definitely recommend, if it's the first time you play the game, that you try the training missions first. Now, the mission mode. When you select the mission, the group captain gives you 4 alternatives. V-1 rocket. The enemy is tossing V-1 buzz bombs accompanied by an unknown number of ME-109 fighters. Bomber. Ju-88 and ME-109 bomber planes control the skies. Train. Rail transport of Allied POWs to enemy camps is underway. ME-109 air support is probable. U-boats. Enemy submarines are converging on Allied convoys. So basically, you have 2 missions where you're bombing trains and U-boats, and 2 missions where you're trying to get basically blow up bombers and rockets out of the sky. Each one is a known enemy threat. The mission that's the most crucial at the moment depends on the enemy's total war effort. After a few missions, it'll be up to you to choose the best strategic attack area. Move the controller direction forward or back to point to a choice and press the fire button to mark it. You can choose more than 1 mission at a time. Then you can select begin game and press the fire button to start. So you can have up to 4 different things in this mission. And by the way, the dogfight is not really a mission you select. You can practice dogfights, but it's not really a mission. But the little dogfighting things happen throughout all the missions. It's just kind of like a nuisance that happens in all of them. Intelligence report. Intelligence agents, resistant groups, and aerial reconnaissance work ceaselessly to pinpoint exact enemy positions. Headquarters now makes you privy to their report. The report file contains information on weather conditions, recommended altitude, weapon, and target sequence. Memorize the report. This information can keep you alive, and they do that at the beginning before you start your game. Move the directional controller forward or back to accept or reject a mission, then press the fire button. Reject the mission when you want to choose another alternative. Accept the mission, there's no turning back. Your navigation map appears. The next page shows you about the navigational map, and that it shows major European cities and enemy positions based on intelligent reports. Take a good long look. This information will be vital to you. So on the map, it shows where London is, some of your bases, storm clouds, which will move on the map, your Mosquito, which looks like a little plane, bomber planes. So the Mosquito looks like a plane that's flying at you. It's like you can see at the front. The bomber planes on the map looks like top down, kind of like the cover of the game. Those are the enemy planes, and the trains and the U-boats as well. And the rockets look like basically like a ruler with just little propellers at the end. The rockets aren't really much. They kind of almost look like a tower. By the way, also on the map, some of you might find this humorous. It points out that there's a map light. It's like this little lamp. Interesting thing about this map light is when I first got the game, it has like a red thing coming out that's supposed to be like the cord or the arm of the map. I thought the map light was originally a marker drawing red for some unknown reason. It never moved, but for some reason I thought the map light was a marker. It says in the manual to review the map often during your mission. Intercept the air and ground enemy weapon carriers before they reach their destinations. Destroy the U-boats before the subs can set sail and attack Allied convoys in the North Atlantic. Avoid storm clouds. They spell trouble. Now press the fire button to prepare your plane. Selecting ammunition and fuel. You now load your ammunition and fuel in the weapons room. Your intelligence report recommends correct ammunition. You'll use the cannon shells and rockets for dogfights and bombs for surface targets. So those are like the U-boats and trains. If your targets are U-boats and trains, load up on bombs and add a few cannon shells and rockets for surprises, yours and theirs. If you're going for Ace of Aces status, choose all 4 missions. Select the ammunition based on the bombing and dogfight prowess of the intelligence report. Add fuel tanks for long-range missions. You automatically have 1 fuel tank already loaded, and the screen just shows you how you can select the missions. You have these plus and minuses next to the various pictures of the bombs and rockets, and if you want more, you hit the plus, and if you want to take away, you add the minus. Next to each offering, and it tells you that right there, so I'll go ahead and skip that. Once you have selected what you want, click done, and they move on. All right, going on. While airborne, you got 5 views from which to carry on your attack. Use the directional control and the fire button to change views. Follow the table. A double press of the fire button means 2 quick clicks. So there's 5 views. There's a cockpit view, which is straight ahead. Then there's what they call engine rooms, the left wing and the right wing. So basically what it is you're just looking to your left and your right, and you can see that wing and you can see if it's on fire. There's a navigational map, and then there's the bomb bay where you can bomb the U-boats and the trains. So here's what you do. To do any of these, you have to double press the fire button. I kind of wish they would have used the secondary button to do this, because there were some times when I was fighting and I was pressing to fire my guns, I accidentally double hit and I ended up changing views when I didn't want to. But if you want the cockpit view, you double press and push forward. If you want the wings, you either press left or right depending which wing you want to look at. If you want the navigational map, you have to push down after you double press. So you double press the right button or left button and press down. And for the bomb bay doors, you double press the fire button, but you keep the joystick centered. Cockpit. When you look forward from the cockpit into the skies or cloud cover, use your controls to keep your Mosquito on course. Press the fire button to fire the cannon and rockets. And you can, in the bomb bay, you can select which one you're firing. Crosshairs turn red when your target is in firing range. Compass, the initial compass heading is south. Change course by pushing the directional left or right. A dark line on the compass indicates the correct heading for the next target. When all the targets are destroyed, the dark line heading shows you the way home. And I didn't realize that until I read that right now. And I've read this manual before, I think, but I didn't realize that's what the dark line was for. And then it shows you a picture of the cockpit view where you can see your compass. From left to right, your compass, your airspeed, your yoke, your basically your flight control stick, your artificial horizon, your altimeter, your enemy altitude, and your radar. And at the bottom left is your intercom, and it's not like an intercom like, would you like some coffee, Captain? But it's a little picture of your plane, and if it blinks red in an area, it means that your attention is needed. So if the center blinks red, it probably means that you're in bombing range of your bombing targets. If a wing blinks red, it means like it's on fire. If the front blinks red, it means that you will see a target in front of you. So I will skip telling all that stuff. The next thing is it goes over the different things you see on the right and the left wing. And from left to right, you can see the the fire extinguisher. You can see your fuel gauge. You can see if your landing gear's up or down, your trim, your flaps. These are all buttons which you can use the joystick to move left and right in this thing, and then you can access it by pressing the button and pressing up and down the joystick. It also has a throttle gauge and a booster gauge, and there's gauges and slides that you can go through it. So the throttle and the throttle gauge controls your engine speed measured in RPMs. Move the lever up to increase, and if the engine is over revving in RPM and is in the red zone, decrease it immediately. If you can't slow down the engine, or if the engine's on fire, you will have to go for the fire extinguisher. The booster controls the pitch of your propellers measured at and angles on the booster gauge. Move the lever forward to increase pitch. The booster must be at the same setting as you throttle for top fuel efficiency. If the throttle and booster aren't balanced, the engine will either over rev or lug. Landing gear. Keep this control in the up position unless you want to reduce speed quickly. Useful for evading enemy fighters. And by the way, you don't ever land or take off in this game. It all happens out automatically, so you don't need to lower your landing gear to land. It just automatically, when you fly to an area, it's there. The trim controls the tail rudder and determines your direction of flight. The wing flaps are your brakes. Move the lever up to brake, but be careful at high speeds. The vibrations could cause damage. There's a fire extinguisher where if you move the lever right to spray fire on the engines. Once an engine is doused, it's out of commission until repaired, which basically means until your game's over. And fuel, you can of course check your fuel gauge. When a tank is empty, switch to the bomb bay door and you can take care of the problem there. The bomb bay view tells you how much ammunition you have left. You can move the directional control left or right position to above the control, and then hold the fire button to move the directional control left or right to change the setting. The bomb bay doors controls is used to open and close the doors. Let's see, the fuel tank drop. Drop empty fuel tanks to improve your fuel or for a quick getaway. Be sure you have enough fuel to get home. That's always a good idea. And the gun rocket select. This lever lets you choose if you want to use the gun, which is also the cannon, or the rockets to fire on your target. Then strategy, dogfights. Enemy fighters attack randomly without warning. When an enemy aircraft turns up on your radar, your mosquito position freezes on the navigational map. You must down the enemy before he gets you, and make it quick. You're burning up fuel. Enemy aircraft attack in greater numbers once you have destroyed their trains and their U-boats. V1s are slower than fighters. If they're too close to you when they explode, their shrapnel may damage your mosquito. Trains. You must stop the POW trains en route to Berlin. Aim only at the cars marked with the Iron Cross. Cars marked with the Red Cross carry captured Allied troops and will cost you points if destroyed. If you get only one crack at the train, so be precise about your altitude and speed. Your best attack position is 1,000 feet and 100 miles per hour, and that's the same for the U-boats, which are preparing to attack Allied ships. Stop them before they launch. Once you open your bomb bay doors, the U-boats will pick you up on their instruments and begin diving. And that means they get smaller and smaller, harder to hit. Once underwater, they will not resurface for the duration of your mission. Your maximum attack position is 1,000 feet and 100 miles per hour. Survival. Intelligence advises the following survival tactics. Check out the intercom often for trouble spots. Your chances of survival are greater if you can contain damage early on. You'll need extra speed in order to climb when you have a full load of weapons and fuel. Speed increases when you drop bombs and fuel tanks. Scoring. You do score in this game, whether you are destroyed or whether you get back to London. If you ever get back to London, it ends your game too, but you get extra points. So as far as destroying the enemy, you get 1,000 points for destroying a rocket. If you destroy a fighter with a rocket, 500 points if you destroy them with a cannon. If you destroy the V1s with a rocket, it's 300. A cannon is 150. Bombers, you get 200 points with rocket destroying. Cannons get you 100 points. Train cars are worth 200 points. U-boats are worth 250. And destroying a POW car on the train will lose you 200 points. You also get 2,000 points if you safely return. If you have any bombs intact, you get 50 points per bombs. Rockets, you get 50 points for those. Any cannon shells left over, you get 10 points. And if you have a fuel tank intact, you get 10 points for that as well. All right, the graphics of the game at the beginning, you have a nice static screen. It says Ace of Aces and kind of not red, white, and blue, red and blue. And you see pictures of planes overhead. It looks like a computer introductory screen. It says copyright 1988. Ace of Aces is a trademark of Nova Game Design Incorporated. Then when you start the game, you see this, you're kind of like, it's like you're in a meeting. There's like 3 officers sitting around. You're among them, and there's the big cheese on top pointing his little, what do you call that stick that you point at a chalkboard? His pointer stick. at either practice or missions, and then you move a stick to select which one you want of those, and then when you select them, you move the stick to make your selections. When it's time to start your game, they show these black and white photos with and there's sounds, like there's this air horn going on, and you can hear like the engine revving up, and it's supposed to represent that you're taking off. So there's 6 pictures, each one showing you the next progression of starting your engine and getting ready to take off. Your map screen, like I said before, it looks like a map. It looks like a computer game. You see some different cities like Paris, Amsterdam, Berlin, and Munich, and little blue triangles are used for the different cities, and the red triangle is, I believe, London, where your home base is. And at the end, you got a status screen, which is very, very limited. And the manual didn't say it, but if you push the right button, you can see the status screen as well, which, again, I wish I used the right button to change views, but oh well. So let's see, once you are flying, if you're from the front position, it depends where you are in the altitude. Sometimes all you can see is the color of the clouds. If you get above the clouds, you can actually see the different shapes of the clouds and the different shades of the clouds, but it's kind of choppy. Like the animation isn't extremely smooth. So it's like, it moves choppily. I don't know how else to say it. When enemy fighters are coming at you, the way the plane basically is always kind of pointed at you, but sometimes if they're flying away, you can see like their underbelly. So there's different animations for the plane. When you look out of the wing, it looks really nice. You can see like the clouds scrolling, but it's a static screen. It doesn't go up and down. It always pretty much looks the same. And if you see an enemy coming at you from the side, it's like he's coming at you from the front. You don't see the side of him. You see the front, like he's going about to shoot you. And the bomb bay doors, I think that's kind of self-explanatory. You can see all the bombs and everything kind of sitting alongside the bomb bay doors. Overall, I think the graphics look pretty good, especially when they're still like the front, like if you're just looking at screenshots. The clouds, like I said, can be choppy when you're in the cockpit view, but other than that, everything looks great. Music and sound is pretty sparse. Basically, for the most part of the game, you're just going to hear the roar of your engine and not a lot else, except for occasional weapon firing and explosion sounds. And they're not that impressive, to be honest with you. If you like flight sims, you're most likely used to this, but if not, it might bother you. At the end of the game, like if you die, I think it plays like a little version of taps, and if you succeed, it plays a little musical ditty, but it's a very short ditty. Over at Atari Age and Digital Press, they both give it a rarity 2, making this a pretty common game. There were 3 external Atari Age reviews. The high was 80, the low was 68, the average was 73, so pretty fairly rated. And there was not any Atari Age High Score Club entry for Ace of Aces. You could do it, but it might be hard. Like, I guess what you could do is just be like, hey, play a game of Ace of Aces and get the high score possible. You select how many missions you want to do. But that might not be... it might not be everybody's cup of tea. I can understand why they'd skip over this game. On eBay, loose copies go for about $7 to $10. Complete copies were selling for about $11 to $12, but there weren't any new copies when I checked. And of course, that includes the shipping. I did own Ace of Aces growing up. Like I said before, I am a flight sim fan. And I remember when I owned it, enjoying it, but I had a lot of trouble with the U-boat and the train stages if I wasn't doing practice. And to this day, I have a hard time getting my altitude and everything just right to do those stages. So typically, if I want to play those stages, I don't do them in mission mode. I do the practice where it basically sets you up and all you have to do is go to your bomb bay doors and open them up and you can blast away, which was fun. I had a lot of fun with the game, but I never really got so deep in the mission where I could do that. Today, could I maybe get used to it? Maybe, but I really don't have the patience for that. But yeah, I did own it growing up, and I did enjoy it as well. All right, that's Ace of Aces. Whew, that was a lot. Big manual. Did you like that, Ferg? Let's go ahead and go to our next game, Mean 18 Ultimate Golf.
This is Michael from the Two Dudes in a Nest podcast, where we talk about the Nintendo Entertainment System, and you are listening to the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast. Hopefully it's maybe like the Donkey Kong or Donkey Kong Jr. or maybe the Mario Brothers episode, since I'm from the Nintendo, that would make sense. But anyways, enjoy the show.
You know what would make sense? Calling your show Two Dudes and Two Nintendo Entertainment Systems. Seriously. Do you guys actually share the same Nintendo?
Mean 18 Golf, or Mean 18 Ultimate Golf, first appeared on computers in 1986, and it was the first computer golf game to give the golfer's point of view of the course, and it was also the first one that came with a course editor that allowed players to create their own courses. It also featured the now popular 3-click control system. You know, the first click starts the swing, the second one for the power, the third one to kind of get either if you're going to slice or hit it dead on or whatever. And when Mean 18 first came out on computers, it featured 3 courses: Pebble Beach, which is also on the Atari 7800 version, St. Andrews, and Augusta National. Now, the 7800 version would come out in 1989. This is one of the last releases on the system, and it's a very rare game, very hard to come by. There was no course editor, and there was only Pebble Beach. By the way, I believe the computer versions also had expansion packs if you wanted to get some extra courses. But of course, back then, if you used bulletin board systems, people could share their courses they made as well. The cover it looks like it's meant for adults. It says Mean 18 in green font with some white border. Really looks like a kind of almost like a golf magazine cover. You can see what I believe is the putter, just the end of the putter, and a golf ball on the cover that says Mean 18 Ultimate Golf and 4 Atari Fuji symbols on top of it to mark the ball. On the back it says golf so real you can feel the grass under your feet, and it shows 2 nice looking screenshots. One, your standard behind the back kind of view, the golfer's getting ready to kind of hit it onto the green, and the other, the putting view from nearby. No other golf game delivers the realism and playability of Mean 18 Ultimate Golf. It's the most true-to-life golf simulation game ever. You are at Pebble Beach, but don't be fooled by the beautiful fairways and breathtaking scenery. The first hole is 427-yard par 4, and there's plenty of roughs between the water between you and the pin, roughs and water between you and the pin. With lifelike animation, pattern after the pros, and numerous strategy options, Mean 18 Ultimate Golf will sharpen your golf skills and possibly help your real-life game. Well, I don't know about that. In the beginning, you can select to shoot from either the pro or regulation tee. You can also decide whether the game will be a stroke or match play, or if you will play in expert mode. 18-hole tournament course for 1 or 2 players, challenge match for 2 players, 2 levels of play. And it has the little FBI winners don't use drugs thing at the bottom corner. The manual is much shorter, thankfully, than Ace of Aces. It's just a 6-page fold-out manual with, once again, the red, white, and black version of the cover art, which doesn't look nearly as good as the box art this time. This is it. A hush falls over the California countryside as you stand on the 18th hole of Pebble Beach. You're 5 long feet from the hole, and you have the biggest one-stroke lead in the biggest tournament of your life. Your caddy hands you your lucky putter. You line up your shot and swing. The ball rolls slowly towards the hole. There's a tense moment as it almost rings the cup. Finally, the ball falls in. You retain the title. And it says for getting started, just how to, set up your system. Once again, press the selector or move the left controller forward or back to select play options. In a 2-player game, use the right controller to select play options for player number 2. Press the fire button after making each selection. You can either select 1 or 2 players. The skill level is either beginner or expert. And then the tees, you can use regular or pro tees. And then gameplay is stroke or match, but you can only do the match if you're doing a 2-player game. Note, if you select beginner, the margin of error is less, but you can still slice and shank the ball. Expert players must choose their own clubs and make more accurate shots. Using the Pro Tee options makes for longer distance to the green. Stroke/medal game is for a normal gameplay. When you select the match, the best player on each hole wins. Match play is only available in 2 players. After selecting the option, an overhead view of the first hole appears. The overhead view gives the hole number, distance to the tee, and the hole, and the par. Press the fire button to begin playing golf. During play, you can do the following: to reset the game, to restart the game, plus reset. To see the overhead view of the hole, press select. So it's one of the few games that uses select switch. And to see your scorecard, press pause. Note, press the fire button to return to the regular playing screen after using any of the above objects. Playing the game. Mean 18 allows 1 or 2 people to play around a golf at Pebble Beach. This simulation of a classic game blends strategy and skill. Order of play. At the beginning of each hole, the order of play is determined by honors. That is, the player who won the previous hole goes first. Once all the players have teed off, the player farthest from the hole plays next. Making the shot. To change, and by the way, if you play a single player, there is no computer opponent, it's just you. Making the shot. To change the club selection, move your controller forward or backward. You can control your aim by moving the controller left or right. Move the controller left or right to shift the view with a partial left or right rotation possible. A complete shot requires 3 taps on the fire button. Once to start your backswing, each line on the power gauge increases the power swing by 10% of the club's rated potential distance. And they show you an example on this page. Club distance table below. The dark area on the top indicator indicates an overswing, which significantly reduces ball control and results in longer, wilder shots. Tap again to begin the downswing. Press the fire button a second time to start the downswing at the desired point of power gauge, when an arrow marks the point where this occurred. Stopping your backswing partway up results in a shorter shot, useful for chipping. Tap the third time at the button. Tap the third time at the bottom of your swing. The third tap snaps your wrist at the bottom of your swing. Snap, and by the way, I never realized that's what the last swing was for snapping your wrist, so that's interesting. Snapping the wrist early above the line where your swing began results in a hook. A hooked ball curves to the left. Snapping your wrist late below the line where the swing lands results in a slice. A slice ball curves to the right. I'm glad they explained it because I'm not a big golfer, so if you just asked me on the street, what's a hook difference between a hooker and a slice, I'd be like, I don't know. An arrow marks the point where the wrists were snapped. Warning, if you don't snap your wrist during the swing, expect to find your ball in the rough. Not snapping the wrist results in a severe slice. Putting. Move the controller left or right to aim your putt. A line between your ball and the cup helps you aim. The arrows on the ground indicate the direction of the green breaks. The ball will move in the direction of the green breaks. Therefore, you must anticipate the correct line the ball should travel to sink your putt. As with distance shots, putts require you to press the fire button twice. Press it the first time to set the power and the second time to set your accuracy as you would with a regular shot. And by the way, this can be very difficult on very close putts to overswing or to not get it accurately because you have to press so quickly it's hard to get everything precise. With a good full swing, each club averages the following distance of loft. Loft is the angle the club face. The ball goes higher in the air as the loft increases. So it goes through your clubs like the driver. You can get 250 yards and the loft is 16 degrees. And another example, the 5-iron, it gives you 172 yards and a loft of 30 degrees. And it keeps going on and on like that. And then also tells you about your pitching wedge being 112 and your sand wedge being 100. Sandwich makes me hungry. Putter, each mark on the gauge is approximately 8 feet. Make allowances for breaks in the green. And I should say right here, unlike a lot of modern golf games, the gauges don't have any yard markings at all. So you're kind of having to guess it and get a feel for it. Terrain. When landing in a rough or using short irons, such as a 9-iron, the ball comes and stops more quickly than normal. The ball bites more quickly on the green than on the fairway. When landing in the sand, the ball comes to a stop very quickly, although the ball may skip out of the trap. When using a wood or long iron, for example, a 3-wood or 3-iron, the ball continues to roll farther unless it lands in the rougher trap. If the ball comes to rest out of bounds, the penalty stroke is taken, in addition to the stroke played, and the shot must be replayed. And if the ball lands in the water, a penalty stroke is taken and the ball is replayed. By the way, I don't think I ever hit it completely out of bounds. There was times I thought it was, but it wasn't. So it's kind of generous in that area. Trees, and this does happen. When a ball hits a tree, it either ricochets back towards you or at a random angle. If you hit a solid brown or black part of the tree or goes through the tree, slows down and exits sideways along a random angle. The greens, when all players have reached the current green, the screen switches to an overhead view of the green showing the position of the balls. Player furthest from the hole putts first, play proceeds normally, except that players have the option of finishing their putts like real golf etiquette. Strategy. A wood results in poor shot from a deeper, rougher sand trap. Use an iron. Make sure not to overswing. An overswing will almost certainly result in a poor shot. Each shot's trajectory is a combination of your swing and luck. When the ball hits the ground, it randomly bounces to left or right. So even if you think you have it dead on, it still might it may not be a dead-on shot because it seems like there is a bit of randomness. And this was frustrating to me at first, but I got used to it. And actually, I kind of appreciate it because it's kind of like how golf really is. When hitting from a different terrains, use bigger clubs than normal to achieve the same distance. Light roughs, 1 club. Deep rough sand, 2 or 3 clubs. Graphically, at the beginning, you just have a very kind of bland screen. I guess it's okay. It says mean in blue letters, 18 in green, and they're kind of 3D-ish coming at you. You see a flag and a golf ball by the hole in the flag. And then your golf clubs is leaning against a white picket fence for whatever reason. I don't know why there's a white picket fence, but there is. When you play the game, as it says, you get a behind the back screenshot, which reminds me a lot of the PGA Tour games on the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo, except 8-bit version. And it looks pretty good. The trees look nice. Your guy looks pretty good. Everything looks decent for an 8-bit game. It really does a good job. On the screen at the bottom, it tells you which player, which hole you're on, how many strokes you've done, the distance to the hole, and the club that you have currently selected. And by the way, your gauge is on the complete left side of the screen, with the red at the top for the overswing and the blue for if you go below where you start your swing. When you putt, it depends where you're at. If you're far away, it may show you a far shot. First, it shows you the hole, and then it shows you your golf from an overhead top-down perspective, similar to the Ace of Aces cover, where it's top-down, like you're flying over them. And it tells you the same information as far as everything except what club you're using, because of course you're using the putter. And if you get really close in, it zooms in a bit, and which is kind of nice. And the guy even like adjusts. There's an animation for his head. He like looks like he's checking the line of the ball, looking at his club, looking at the hole. I think it looks pretty nice. In between holes, you have like a little board, a sign, a wooden sign that shows you just an overhead small picture of the hole and all the information, like what hole it is, what the par is, and the difference between the distance between the regular and the pro tees. And I think, again, this looks like nice. Your scorecard is really basic. It just says Pebble Beach, and it keeps your score. I don't know what else to say. There's a little pencil on each line. So overall, this game, it looks really nice. The music and sounds like Ace of Aces are really sparse. This might be the most sparsest sound-wise episode I've had as far as games are concerned. They're not really impressive. It's golf, though. It doesn't really matter, but I think they could have done a better job with the sounds. Atari Age gives this a rarity 6. Digital Press gives it a rarity 7. This is one of the rarest games on the system. I would probably lean towards the 7 in this case. Usually I always go with Atari Age, but this time Digital Press. There was only one external review for 60% on Atari Age. And there was an Atari High Score Club entry on the beginner level with the Pro Tees. And I like using the beginner levels because it kind of automatically selects your clubs. I don't like to think too much. I don't want to have to reference the manual and try and figure it out. Atomic Knee Drop, who I think is my nemesis, who beat me on the Double Dragon high score, got under 3 for the course of 69. When I played the game, I was even, so I had a 72. So I guess I wasn't too far off. I could have done better. If with some practice, I might be able to beat that, but I don't know. On eBay, there was one loose copy recently that sold for $53. There was one with manual copy that sold for $65, and one complete in box that sold for $90. So this I think is the most expensive game outside of Tank Command. And there were no new copies that sold recently. I never owned this. I don't even know if I ever saw it for sale. I might have seen it for sale in the Radio Shack catalogs. There was a time where if you wanted Atari games, Radio Shack had a catalog in their stores, and there was a page dedicated to the Atari stuff, which was really interesting. I remember flipping through it. I may have sold my Atari 7800 by then. But when I bought games from O'Shea's, I don't even know if this one made the cut. So I wonder if this was very rare. It had a very limited run. It was targeted towards adults, I think, more than kids. So odds are it was a very limited audience. That might explain why it is. I don't know if O'Shea's ever had it. As far as Atarian magazine goes, these games didn't get mentioned too much. Mean 18 Golf did get mentioned in page 22 of the second issue, where they show you a screenshot, which it has to be from a computer version. I don't think it looks better than the Atari 7800 version, but it just, under their previews, it shows that it's coming soon. And then let's see, Ace of Aces. Neither of these games, by the way, showed up in the top 10. Ace of Aces did for the Atari XE. It showed up in the top 10s, but not the 7800. And it got a full kind of page review. Their reviews weren't really reviews. They're kind of overviews, I guess, because they weren't really critical at all. They just kind of told you what the game was, and then at the end they would tell you something like, far from being your average shoot 'em up, this is a truly challenging game that requires skill, dexterity, timing, and intelligence to attain the rank of Ace of Aces. So it sounds like almost like an extended version of the back of the box. So there you go. That is Mean 18 Golf, and that's Atari Magazine. Let's go ahead to listener feedback.
Hey everybody, this is Ferg from the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast, the greatest Atari 2600 podcast in the universe. And you are listening to Phil, the No Swear Gamer, on the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast, the greatest Atari 7800 podcast in the universe. Go get him, Phil.
Over at Atari Age, I started a thread under the Atari 7800 section asking for feedback on these two games. I asked them to rate the game on a system of 4 choices. The No Swear Game rating that is used on Shinto's podcast. I think that's a really good rating, so we'll go with that. The top choice is a Hall of Fame game. That means it's a top 5 game on the system. Next up is a solid game, followed by meh, and then a trash game being a bottom 5 game on the system. And by the way, when I use those ratings, I do not include homebrews. I'm just asking about the general original released library when counting those, because I know a lot of people really hold some of the more modern titles in high regard, but I kind of view those as like a separate category almost. So here's what the people over at Atari Age had to say. Golden Wheel says, I very much enjoy Mean 18 and consider it a very solid game. I played the heck out of it on my grandfather's PC Junior back in the Ferg, and the 7800 is almost as enjoyable. Has nice graphics, withdraw quickly compared to the PC Junior anyway. It's frustrating that the yards aren't marked on the power meter, but in a weird way, that's actually kind of realistic. You need to learn how many yards a ball goes with X club at X spot on the power meter, like finding your range in real golf to some degree. On the other hand, it would be a lot more approachable to newcomers with yard markings. And I agree with everything he just said. There is a bit of realism that once you get used to it, you kind of appreciate. And like I said earlier, I think even when you hit perfect shots, I think there's a little bit of luck involved. I don't think I said this, but there's no wind on the course. So I think that kind of adds into like the luck category. So it is interesting. It is kind of realistic in that way. He goes on, short putting due to the weird way your shots angle off your club, but your player doesn't move is also kind of, well, weird. I do wish there were more courses than one. That's kind of a killer in a golf game, in my opinion. PC version has expansion discs, which obviously wasn't a 7800 option. Unless they came out with the computer keyboard, then maybe it would have been. Bido Empire said, never played either. Unfortunately, on the 7800, I probably played Mean 18 on the PC at some point. Ace of Aces always looked cool, just never got around to getting into it. Retro Gamer 81081 says Ace of Aces is a meh game. In terms of flight simulators for the system, it is better than F-18 Hornet. The graphics and animation is impressive, but I consider the gameplay a bit slow and tedious, especially that you are constantly toggling between cockpit and map views. Mean 18 is a solid game. Well, more like a great game. It has great and easy. It has a great and easy to learn play learning curve. Sorry for totally messing that up. It takes about half an hour to a little over to play a full 18-hole game. The graphics and animation is impressive. Plus the golfer's swing, fluidity, no wind affecting the ball direction, and simple and easy to play. I was really impressed with it, despite not getting into golf video games. Let's see. How do you say this name? Tremolo Man. Is that it? Tremolo Man. Tremolo Man 2006. Mean 18 is a great title. Next to Pac-Man plus his homebrews, this title was the other main reason I got a 7800. Very interesting. Sorry, didn't play Ace of Aces. Gil Saluki says, Mean 18 is great. Darn hard to find. I paid $40 years ago for mine in a box. Wow. Felt like I had found gold. Yeah, that's a great deal. Usually $40 for an inbox 7800 game is overpaying, but not in that case at all. Sean says Mean 18 is a Hall of Fame 7800 title. Ace of Aces is between meh and trash. Very interesting. Jink says, I agree with Sean's comments. I find it accurate to my findings at the present time. All right. Trevor says Ace of Aces equals trash. Mean 18 equals meh. So wow, very low on those two games. Thursday 83 says Mean 18 is a Hall of Fame game. Awesome. And Ace of Aces, well, he says not so much. Oh, wow. So it's really interesting with Mean 18, at least. There's some people saying Hall of Fame and some like they're just not excited about it. I guess that kind of comes with the golf game territory, but it's still pretty interesting. And then finally, 82 TA says, I'll be brutally honest. The last time I played either of those games was back in the 80s, but I distinctly remember them well because I really enjoyed them. I liked Ace of Aces a lot, but I think I liked Mean 18 more. It felt like the 7800 version played better than the PC version. Very, very interesting. So those were the comments on over at Atari H. Let's go to the mailbag. All right, I got 2 text submissions that were sent to me at Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. That's Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. The first one comes from Bido Empire, who we just heard from a little bit in the forum in the last segment. So let's see what Bido has to say. Hi there. I just started listening to the 7800 Game by Game podcast, and I've been enjoying it. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. I actually bought a 7800 back in the Ferg. I had saved enough money to buy a new console, and I couldn't decide between the NES and the 7800. The lady at KB Toys, with whom I spoke frequently, said most of the kids seem to be buying an NES. At the time, I thought she must have known all about games because she worked there. Of course, in hindsight, she was just a clerk. Funny how much misplaced faith kids put in adults sometimes. Anyway, I had a 2600 and loved it, but the NES seemed so new. Screenshots of games like Super Mario Bros. And Castlevania were too much to resist, so I took the plunge and bought the NES. About 6 months later, they had 7800s for $50. And along with the cheap games, it was hard to pass it up again, so I took the plunge. Food Fight had been my consistent #1 game on the system over the years, but I enjoyed all the good arcade ports. I played 7800 Asteroids in college, even though I had a Genesis and SNES at the time. Good games never go out of style, totally agree there. In conclusion, I never had that many games for the system. Much of what I have now was acquired after its heyday. It's a system I do play fairly often, but I'd put it in the middle of the pack. To me, the 7800 console is brimming with unrealized potential. Thankfully, a great homebrew scene today is helping realize that potential. As my 7800 library is pretty small, maybe about 20 games, which by the way is like over a third of the library if you're just counting the original releases, I'm enjoying listening to the podcast and hearing about all those games I don't yet have. Keep it up. Thanks, Bido Empire over at Atari Age. P.S. I hate dark chambers. I hate the dark chambers mechanic of shooting creatures and turning them into lesser creatures. It doesn't make any sense. All right, yeah, totally. I can understand that. I thought it was an interesting quirk because you don't usually see that, but I could totally understand that as well. And thank you for sending a little text submission. If you ever want to expound on any other games I've covered already or any ones I will cover, I'd be more than happy to hear it. But I thank you for plugging away at the threads I post as well. So thank you very much, Bido. And if I said your name wrong, please correct me. All right. Let's see. Next up, I got another text submission from Lewis, who says, Hi, Phil. Hopefully this feedback isn't too late. Not at all. I have to say I really liked Ace of Aces. It's still a solid game in my opinion, even though old flight simulators tend to age a bit more than those timeless fast arcade games. Yeah, I can see how you could say that. It's funny. I had really good memories of Epic's Destroyer game. Although that one is about a destroyer boat and not a plane, it has some vague similarities. By the way, I've never heard of that game, so that sounds interesting. You plot out a route where you essentially take on a variety of enemies by manning different stations, which each play a bit differently. Interesting. You could even think of each station as a different minigame in a way. Anyway, that old Destroyer game didn't age very well at all. The game I once enjoyed was boring when I went back to it decades later. That was not the case for Ace of Aces. I didn't have Ace and Aces back in the Ferg, but when I discovered it a couple years ago, I found it very playable, if appropriately slow-paced, game where I wanted to experiment with the different scenarios. Plus, I learned what buzz bombs were from playing it. I was intrigued. Yeah, so I was wrong. I said buzz bombers, and you know what I was thinking of? I think, isn't there an Intellivision game called Buzz Bombers, the little bee game that's kind of like a cross between Centipede and Bumblebees? I think that's what I was thinking of when I thought Buzz Bombers. Anyways, I was intrigued by how video gamey they seemed and how you could actually tail them in midair and knock them out of the sky. So I asked a friend who knows about old planes and if it was just something they added to the game, and I was surprised to find out that they were portrayed pretty faithfully in Ace of Aces. That's interesting. Now, I know it's a bit late, but I was surprised how many listeners enjoyed Dark Chambers. I just could not get into it. Well, there was actually a fair amount who didn't. I think it was kind of split. It was kind of even in that way. Though I did get destroyed on the hardest setting, I can't help but feel that there's something missing about it. Maybe approaching it like Gauntlet is the wrong thing to do. So I asked people who like Dark Chambers what some interesting strategies are. Essentially, I wish I had a Dark Chambers appreciation guy. Okay, I should probably get back to work. I look forward to this week's episode. Signed, Lewis. Thank you very much, Lewis. And yeah, if you really like Dark Chambers and want to say why you like it and if there's a difference between Gauntlet, write in and let us know why you like it. All right, I actually got a decent amount of audio submissions. I wasn't expecting it because these two games are not the most popular games. Flight simulators are kind of hit and miss. You have a lot of people who just don't get into them because of the learning curve. And Mean 18 is a golf game that was very rare, so a lot of people haven't played it. But one audio submission I want to preface comes from Greg over at the Snooze podcast. Greg kind of contacted me on Facebook and said, "Hey, dude, you talked about Commando, but you didn't talk about its sequels in the history part." And you know what? He's right. And here's the problem. I guess I wasn't thinking of Commando having sequels. I know there was Bionic Commando, but I view that kind of as a side game, not necessarily a sequel game. And there wasn't, and I didn't remember games that ended like Commando 2 or Commando 3. So I said, Greg, I'll look into that, but he's a big Commando fan. It's like, I'd be honored if you'd share some history on the Commando series. So we're kind of going back in time, and let's hear what Greg has to say about the Commando series. Greg, take it away.
Hello, Phil. Greg, aka Soapblazer here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to record this extra submission on Commando. I sent Phil some feedback when the Commando episode came out, saying that he forgot to mention the Commando sequels and pseudo-sequels, like he usually does for most games that he covers in the 7800. So he kindly gave me the chance to do this, since I am such a big fan of Commando. I should start off by saying that Commando differs a little bit in its timeline from the Japanese and US releases, as is sometimes the case like some of these arcade games. So it's a little confusing. I'll try to make it as clear and concise here as I can. Commando was developed by Capcom. It was released in the arcades in 1985. Because Capcom was not a big company at the time, the North American distribution rights for the arcade was given to Data East. Commando was ported to various computers and consoles at the time. The NES port in 1986 was part of the very first third-party games that were released for the system in late 1986. Capcom released Commando for the NES at the same time as 1942 and Ghosts and Goblins, also very popular like arcade conversions. So Commando does have that distinction. In Japan, the game was called Wolf of the Battlefield, which is a name that's going to come up again here, like in a moment, because in Japan, the proper sequel to Commando was called Mercs, which is that's the North American name of the game. In Japan, it was called Wolf of the Battlefield 2. Again, like you're seeing the direct sequel connection here. Mercs came out in 1989 in North America and Japan, like in the arcades. The game's similar to Commando in several ways. It's still the basic top-down shooter action where you have like bullets and grenades and stuff to use. There are bosses at each of the stages now. There's 6 stages in the game, and you can also pick from one of 3 different players to play. The graphics and music and sound effects were, of course, upgraded since it's like running like later arcade hardware. The best port of Mercs, if you want to play this game, is the Genesis version. They added both the original mode to the game as well as the arcade mode. It's a very, very good port like the arcade game, and definitely is the version of the game. Definitely the version of the game that's worth playing the most. The next proper Commando game came out in 2008, called Wolf of the Battlefield Commando 3. This is a downloadable only game for Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network. It's a decent game. It's not as good as the first 2 games, I think. It does capture the essence and the spirit of the Commando games. You're still doing top-down stuff. And you could also play co-op at the same time with a player. It's very difficult. This is definitely the toughest are the toughest of the Commando games. And this game was also released worldwide at the same time. Now, this is all according to the Japanese timeline. In North America, there was a sequel of the game that was released apparently as a proper sequel, but really, the best way to think about it is a pseudo sequel. The very popular NES game of Bionic Commando, which came out in 1988. This is originally an arcade game that was later ported to the NES in a totally different format than it appears like in the arcade. Super Joe is a character in Bionic Commando, but you're actually playing somebody else. And you're on a mission to rescue Super Joe and also stop a madman dictator and blow up a huge secret weapon called Albatross that they're working on. Bionic Commando is very unique because of the fact that your character cannot jump. He has a bionic arm that he uses, hence the bionic part, to use to swing around and get through the stages, to get through the stages, that kind of stuff. So even though the Japanese were considering it to be kind of a sequel to Commando in North America, these days Bionic Commando is really thought of as a pseudo-sequel game. If you want to play this game, there was a remake of this game done several years back called Bionic Commando Rearmed for the Xbox and PlayStation. An extremely good upgrade, like the original Bionic Commando game. Music, plot, characters, they're all there. They've just been touched up a little bit. Very, very good version of the game. Just stay away from the original new 3D Bionic Commando game made back 2009. That's a terrible game, really. So there's the sequels and the sequels and pseudo sequels to Commando. One other thing I wanted to mention on the real quick, a lot of people in the feedback commented and compared Commando with Atari Warriors, which also came out like around the same time period. And some people said they liked Atari Warriors better. The two games are very, very similar. I actually would give the nod to Atari Warriors over Commando, like an arcade version, because Atari Warriors is one of those games, unfortunately, I was never really quite duplicated properly to the home ports, because in the arcades they had a very unique control scheme. The control knob you twist to have your character swing his gun around in different directions. The home ports mitigated that as best they could, but because of that unique control scheme, none of them really handled or played quite as well in the home version as it did like an arcade. So for arcade, I'd give Atari Warrior the nod over Commando, but home ports, I definitely would give Commando the nod over Atari Warriors. But we'll talk about Atari Warriors more in a future episode, because that's also a game I really enjoy a lot. So anyway, Phil, thank you for giving me this chance, and take care, all.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I totally forgot to mention that Data East brought out Commando, and it's like right in your face. When you start out the 7800 version, it says Data East right away when it's typing out some copyright stuff. Forgot about that, but if you want to learn more about Data East, I believe I talked about it in the Kung Fu Master episode. Can't remember what number that is off the top of my head, but it's somewhere back there. And as far as Bionic Commando goes, it's one of those games that I've played here and there, just bits and pieces. I'll be honest, I never liked the fact that you couldn't jump in the game. And I know the claw thing is such a huge part of the game, and a lot of people rave about how great it is. And right now I actually have it in two versions. I have the original NES cart, and I have the Game Boy Advance Capcom Mini Mix, I think it is. It has 3 NES games on it: Strider, Bionic Commando, and Mighty Final Fight. And I just haven't given it its due time. One day I will put in due time and see if I'm just not appreciating it because I haven't put in the time. I'm guessing that's probably what it is. So thanks again, Greg. Next up is Soul Blazer from the Chew podcast, who's going to comment now on today's game. So Soul Blazer, take it away.
Hello, Phil and 7800 Game by Game podcast listeners. This is Greg, aka Soul Blazer. Wanted to weigh in on this week's games because, again, there's a game in here that I have a lot of experience playing with through a slightly different version of the game. But we'll get to that here in a moment. The games that Phil was looking at this week for the 7800 are, again, 2 ports of popular PC and other computer platforms, Mean 18 Golf and Ace of Aces. I have a lot more experience with Ace of Aces, so I'll talk about Mean 18 Golf here first. This is a game I did not play back when it came out, but one I did see at friends' houses and played every now and then. The original version of this game came out in 1986 and was a very popular golf game for its time period. It was advertised as being a blend between the more serious golf sim games, and the more lighthearted action golf ones. And it was really kind of revolutionary the time it came out, the graphics and the gameplay and that kind of stuff. And as a result, the game received a lot of ports. This is a game I had not played before. In the 7800. I usually like golf games. Golf's not a sport that I really care about in real life, but there's a lot of fun golf games that have been done in video game form over the years. Whether it's the original golf that came out for the NES, all the way up to some of the more recent EA Sports golf games. Golf could be quite a bit of fun, some of your friends. Especially the drinking involved in it. So anyway, Mean 18 Golf, it plays okay in the 7800. It's a severely watered down version of the original PC version of the game, however. You only have one course to pick from, Pebble Beach, whereas the computer versions had 3 or 4 courses available. You only have stroke play available. When you had also pro mode available, available in the home versions. 2 difficulty levels, that's intact. The computer at least is very helpful to you in beginning mode by suggesting a golf club for you. I'm not sure if expert mode does this also. I admit I didn't play a game in expert mode. I just simply played a couple games a beginner to see how the game played. Graphics have sounded quite good. They're comparable to the original PC versions. There's no complaints there. Controls are a little bit difficult to get the hang of. The actual golf swing itself is fine. One button to start, one button to lock in. I know that's pretty and then a third push the button the button also to finish the swing. That's pretty standard for golf controls. It's a little bit slow trying to pan the camera angle around to get setting the best shot angle, and the fact the game actually has to pause for a few seconds in between screens is a bit surprising since this is a cartridge game. I wasn't expecting to see that in a cartridge game. So all in all, it's okay for what it is. This is the only true golf game available on 7800. So I guess if you're a big golf fan, this is what you pretty much had. The conversion's okay, like I said, but the fact it's so watered down, along with the somewhat clumsy controls and with the slow game pace and the game speed, kind of really hurts it. In the end, I'm giving this game a Ma rating. It's playable, it's just not great. Now, Ace of Aces is a game that I have a lot of history with, so I'm going to try to say a little bit different on this than I did before my last PC to 7800 conversion, of Super Huey. So this is again a game I had as a kid. Again, the version of the game I had was a C64, and I spent a ton of time on this game. I've always enjoyed history. I've always been a big World War II fan. That helps. And early on, I really developed a love for simulation games like this, simulation games like this sort. And Ace of Aces was again groundbreaking when the game came out. Originally 1986. In this game, you pilot a RAF British Mosquito, which is a very famous British plane in World War II, with a combination fighter bomber plane. It able to do a bit of both, and you're able to pick either a practice mission or a real mission. And the real mission you can set either from 1, 2, 3, or 4 objectives, on your mission to Europe to attack the Germans. You can either pick to shoot down German planes, to shoot down V1 rockets, to intercept POW trains, and take out the engine in critical cars, to attack U-boats. So you can pick how many of those things you want to do to kind of adjust the difficulty and go from there. The game does a very excellent job of being able to balance some arcade action elements along with the sim elements. It's not as simmy as Super Huey and some other games on 700 that we've looked at before in the past. I mean, the control gauges are there, but they're not complicated. You have 3 viewpoints. For your main viewpoint in the front, and then you also have your viewpoints on the left and right engines. And the controls are all there. You can figure out the controls pretty easily. The manual does help. It's not critical. You certainly can like pick up the game and play it and figure everything out after a while. It doesn't bog you down in controls or sim elements. There's still sim aspects there, but you're able to see at a glance, okay, this is my speed, this is my altitude, this is my compass heading, and go from there. There's some nice sim aspects, like the engines, being able to like increase the engine power, like shut down an engine if it gets damaged. So some very nice functions there. There's also the bomb dropping mode in certain missions. We can also put the plane into steady level flight and go to the bomb bay view and time your bomb drops. So again, I always love this game for the fact that it's very easy. Very easy to get the hang of it, and the game, it does a great balance between action elements and sim elements. I mean, you have the sim aspects of flying the plane, trying to keep you level, trying to handle the controls and instruments, but the arcade elements also work very well because you only have one enemy fighter attacking you at a time. One hit's enough to blow it out of the sky. You basically just have to line your cursor up like the plane and shoot. Good choice of weapons. You can either use rockets or cannon shells, and the bombing aspects on the like the trains and U-boats, it also has a very arcade feel to it. And upon your successful return to England, you're given points based upon how many weapons that you came back with, and how successful that you were destroying your targets. So, like I said, just a wonderful blend of arcade and sim aspects. Blending games like this doesn't usually work very well. The programs here did a great job of being able to capture the essence of arcade game and sim play and mash them together. The weather options are also great. When you fly through clouds, it gets dark. You can fly through thunderstorms. Like some very effective. They have thunder and lightning effects. Trying to dogfight in those clouds is very, very difficult. Really, just some very wonderful aspects. And the game does not take a long time to play. Even if you decide to load up a full mission with all 4 objectives, you can successfully do everything and return back to base about 15-20 minutes. So it's not like an overly long game. Graphics for the game were very good. It's like the original PC/C64 version. Sound effects are minimal, but that's fine. You have the drone of the engines, the shooting of the guns, the thunder and boom of lightning storms as you pass through one. Get the job done very, very effectively. I was really, really impressed by the 700 port of this game, having not played it before in the past. I'm not sure who did the programming on this. I'm sure that Phil will talk about that some in this episode, but the programming job was great. I have not seen so far a PC to 700 game ported over as well as this one was. It's almost perfect. The graphics still look just as good. The sound effects are still very, very effective. All of the it's not watered down in any way. All your controls and dials and gauges there and everything are still there. There's some slight differences and some slight tweaking, like in how the gauges and displays are laid out a little bit. But still, if you're familiar with the PC version, I could pick up this 700 version very, very easily. The controls work very well in this game because the game was ideally played originally on the computer with joystick anyway. So using the 700 joystick, as long as you don't mind the hand cramping, works very well. So you have the kind of a flight sim aspect there of the joystick. So this is one case of the 700 joystick actually is pretty good, all things considered, as far as handling the game. I am really, really impressed by just how great that this version of the game is. So I'm giving this game very high marks because of that. Having said that, I do fully acknowledge here that if you're not a fan of flight sims of any sort, you're not going to like this game. However, the action and the action arcade elements of this game really help to balance the really help to balance the sim aspects of the game, so that it's like that. This game is kind of a sim light. You don't need to be a huge sim fan to pick this game up and really enjoy it. Especially the difficulty options and the settings and everything. Really, I'm just really mind blown by just how well this game is ported over 7800. It's certainly the best computer 7800 version I've seen, and that and nostalgia aside, the fact this game was ported over so well and plays so well is just simply amazing. So because of all that, I may shock some people, but I'm giving this game a Hall of Fame rating. It is certainly one of the best 700 games out there, bar none. As long as you enjoy arcade/flight sims of any sort, you definitely will have a lot of fun like this game. So I've already given Ball Blazer and Commando Hall of Fame ratings, and I know the other two games coming up that I want to give Hall of Fame ratings to. So yeah, this is certainly a game I'll be playing a lot more of, like in this version. It's very, very good, very, very impressive, and it doesn't have the slow load time that the 64 version did. So there's my thoughts on this week's game. Keep up all the great work again, Phil, and thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time, everybody. Take care.
Wow, Hall of Fame. That is quite the rating for you, Greg. Appreciate it, though. I love differing opinions, and I appreciate how much you can appreciate this game, especially coming from playing the original versions of it and seeing how it translated to the 7800. So I really appreciate your viewpoint there. Let's see. There was a few things I wanted to talk about. First of all, Mean 18. Mean 18 is definitely, at least in my opinion, it's one of those games you have to play through a couple times before you get the hang of it. If you just play it once, you're probably not going to get the full hang of it. I hated it the first couple times I played it, but as I got used to the controls, I actually found myself really enjoying it. There is a learning curve to Mean 18, and there's definitely a learning curve to Ace of Aces. I don't know if I mentioned the thunderstorms when I went over the game description, but yeah, there's some cool thunderstorms in the game where it has some good sound effects. I mean, they're simple, but it's effective because the screen goes dark with flashes of lightning. You don't see like lightning, but it just flashes, like white or yellow. I can't remember. But it definitely, after being in blue clouds for so long and all of a sudden it changes, it definitely kind of affects the atmosphere on the game. As far as who have made these games, here's the problem I've been running into. I think it's basically really difficult to find out, as far as about at least half the library of the Atari 7800 games, who originally made it. Because I'm guessing what happened is that Atari subcontracted a lot of it. They kept their name on it. They didn't tell you who the person was. And sometimes they subcontracted it to a company who then would assign a programmer to it. And unless they pop up on Atari Age or another site, it's really hard to find out who did it. And I couldn't find out on any of the sites I searched at. I couldn't find out who programmed Mean 18 or Ace of Aces for the Atari 7800. And sometimes when you find out who does, you get names, you get conflicting reports. Like maybe one site says it was this person, but another one says it's this person. And sometimes the people they say programmed the game actually didn't program the game, but they might have produced the game, if that makes sense. So it can be very difficult. So sorry to disappoint you. I couldn't find out who made these games. One thing I did do, though, as you were talking, is you mentioned who made them. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I said at the beginning, there's a title screenshot that says Nova Games. I looked up Nova Games. Turns out, I guess Ace of Aces was also a book game where, not quite like Dungeons and Dragons, I don't think, but it was a book game where one person would be the Allied forces, one would be the Axis forces. And you'd have these books and they were kind of like choose your own adventures from the sounds of it. This is just a really brief overview. So I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding this. If you know more about this book game than I do, please, write in or send in an audio submission. But it sounds like what you would do is you would take turns saying like, okay, I'm going to do this maneuver. Now in your book, you have to turn to page 27 and tell me what happens. And you just take turns turning pages, and you're basically doing flight combat through choose your own adventure books. Everyone has their own books. It sounds like a very interesting mechanic. But anyways, I kid the Greg Soulblazer. He does a great job over the SNES podcast. Check him out. And recently he dropped an episode where I was with him talking about Tecmo Super Bowl on the SNES, all three games. So be sure to listen to that. All right. Very excited. I get a first-time audio submission from Michael, who's going to, I believe, be part of the Atari XEGS podcast. Yeah, I don't say Zegas. I've always called it the Atari XE. So, Michael, very glad to have you aboard. Let's see what you have to say.
Hey, Phil. My name is Michael Glaser. You might know me from such podcasts as Player Missile, doing the Softside reviews, and the upcoming XEGS Cart by Cart podcast with Dave and Bill. I've been wanting to do an audio game review for you for quite some time, and not just because you have those sweet, sweet giveaways. So this will be a good practice for me for the upcoming podcast I think I just mentioned. Just to mention, I do own a 7800, and I've had it for quite some time, but my cartridge collection is pretty limited, so I'll be using the emulator to review these games. So first up, Ace of Aces. I've been playing flight sims for many years. Started off in the 8-bit, playing Hellcat Ace, Meg Alley Ace, and F-15 Strike Eagle, and then went into playing them on the STs, the PCs, the ETCs. But before I played the game, I made sure to read that 12-page manual, which I found was really helpful and understand how to play the game. I highly recommend people do that. So a little bit of trivia about what we're flying. It's a de Havilland DH-98 Mosquito, twin engine, 2-man crew, hopefully motley, constructed mostly of wood. That's why they call it the Wooden Wonder. Had tons of uses, fighter, bomber, photo reconnaissance, both day and night. It pretty much did it all. It saw use by the Brits, Canadians, and the U.S. First flight was in November 25th, 1940, and it was introduced into service a year later. And they produced it until 1950 when it was replaced by the jet-powered English Electric Canberra. So what I like about the game? Well, I thought the clouds look really cool. They're nice and fluffy. I compare the graphics to the 8-bit computer version, and they're slightly better, except for the intro takeoff scene with the pictures. They're a little bit muddy on the 7800. I thought the game was complex, so it's definitely a true fight sim. You had different missions, maps, lots of views, not just that 12 o'clock view that we see in most sims. And for the most part, the docks were pretty good. So what didn't I like? Well, remember those clouds I mentioned? The 12 o'clock view clouds render a little slowly, seem about 1 a second. It kind of brings the speed of the game down. And of course, might I mention it, those clouds, they're like everywhere. How about maybe a horizon sometimes with clouds once in a while? It was just all clouds. No matter how low I went, I'd still see clouds. I know that's probably because of the limitations of the hardware, but still. And I would have liked the game with a keyboard. Now, of course, I checked the C64 version, and that one's also all joystick. Can't really blame the 7800 developers. But why did they use a second button for the score? I mean, I thought that would be a good opportunity to extend the functionality or make it easier to interact with the UI with using the second button one way or another. Maybe selecting screens instead of using that double click. No flak. You do get flashes, but they could have thrown in some flak bursts once in a while. And the gunfire is kind of lame. Looks like lasers. Doesn't feel like true gunfire. Also, the game is difficult. Even in practice, I could not line up a shot on the ground targets. And I tried. I tried adjusting my engines and lowering altitude. And then I'd pass the target and I had to whip around, try it again. I know there's a waypoint navigation. Still too difficult for me. Now, I'm sure if I played for a while, I'd get the hang of it. But it was just difficult. And that goes for the switching of the screens. The double click is cumbersome. And I sometimes end up changing different controls instead of actually switching screens. So what's my rating? Well, it's got options. That's great. It's a flight sim. That's what you expect. But the game wasn't fun. I felt like it just didn't feel like a fun game to play like, say, Meg Alley Ace. It's not a terrible game. It's just difficult to play. And so I have to give it a meh review. Next up, Mean 18 Golf. I have played a lot of golf games on the computers, but I've never played real golf except for the miniature kind. So my golf knowledge is not too good, but I did look up some golf trivia. Just kidding. So let me tell you the good about the game. Well, there's a lot of it. For the most part, the game plays like those other games I've played in the past. The graphics are decent, and the controls are pretty responsive. And you can also hit the pin with the ball, so that's a nice touch. The bad? Well, it lacks weather condition. I mean, there's no wind, there's no rain, so it doesn't affect the speed of the ball on the green. I didn't notice much effect of the break on the green. I'd hit the ball and didn't seem to break right or left. It just seemed to go straight. You have no control of the ball, so I think if I remember playing the other games, you could put backspin or forward spin on it. Can't do that in this game. No course selection. You got one course. Play your 18 holes. You can't even play 9 holes. You're stuck playing what they give you. And I also noticed when you hit a shot to the green, it appeared the ball would be farther away from the pin, but then when you get to the green view, you'd be much closer sometimes. So small complaint, but not a big deal. So overall, I know I said a bunch of bad stuff about this game, but I was pretty entertained and played it for quite some time. So I definitely think this is something somebody should add to their collection. My verdict for the game? Solid. Well, that's about it. Thanks for listening, and keep gaming.
Thank you, Michael. That was great. I really appreciate you sending in that submission. I'd love to have more if you have any thoughts on games I already covered. And go check out the Player Missile and the Atari XEGS podcast when they come out. Like I said before, I don't have a lot of experience with the 8-bit computers, but I want to. So one day I hope to get an XE system. I'm so thankful for you and Greg. as I was recording the podcast, I was like, oh, I forgot to like do history of the Mosquito aircraft itself. Because when I did Super Huey, I think I did a little bit of history on the Huey brand. But you guys have come through for me, and I'm very grateful covering that. And it was just interesting to hear it. It's always more interesting to hear it from someone who's a little more interested in it. You know, I like, you know, flight simulators, but I'm not into the history of the aircraft themselves sometimes. So that was fascinating. I really, really appreciate that. Fluffy Clouds, great description. I think of that one, what's his name, Ross, that painter guy on PBS, like, hey, everybody, today we're going to play Ace of Aces. Let's paint some happy, fluffy little clouds. Was that the guy? I don't know. I forget his name, but, you know, he had like the puffy hair, fluffy clouds. So it reminded me of that, but yeah, thanks for supporting me. Yeah, the cloud animation is kind of, well, it's choppy. By the way, the lasers, the Canon lasers, what you misunderstood is they upgraded the Mosquito for the 7800 version. They got some Star Wars lasers installed, so I thought that was nice of them. And the ground targets, I'm glad I'm not the only person who has trouble doing the ground targets. Like I said, the only time I can do the bombing targets is if I'm doing the practice mode and I just go to the bomb bay door and open up and hope that it clicks in, and usually it does, and then I can enjoy it. So I really appreciate that. And Andrew Reyna's Mean 18 Golf as well. Yeah, you don't have the weather conditions, but I think for an 8-bit title, it does a lot. I don't know if any of the NES golf games had a lot of weather. They did have wind. I know they had wind. I don't know about rain. I don't know many games that do incorporate rain, but maybe it's because I'm limited as far as the golf goes. But I think that the luck, there's, like I said, the luck that's installed into the swing where it can still kind of slice or hook, even though if it's not supposed to, that kind of takes the place of the wind, in my opinion. But still, it is kind of impressive what they can cram from a computer onto the 7000. So thank you again very much. Now it's time for Get the Ball, David. Let's see what David has to say today.
Hi, Phil. This is Dave back with another audio submission for the Atari 7800 podcast. Today, we're going to be playing Ace of Aces and Mean 18 Golf. I'm here with my buddy Chris.
Hello.
We're going to check it out.
Right.
All right,
Lots
so
of things you can say.
Ace of Aces.
Ace of Aces.
It's a flight simulator type game.
Okay, I see.
Practice or missions?
Oh, well,
Let's do a mission. Let's get in here.
let's start with practice. I don't know how this game works.
All right, we'll go back. We'll do practice.
Let's do the tutorial.
Train. Practice. Train. How is this training? It's not even telling you how to do anything. We're using the Europad, by the way.
Man.
You can also use the
Oh.
Pro-Line controller with... This is what it actually came with, was the fancy...
Oh. All right, Steve, I've accepted the mission here. I'm going to Amsterdam. I'm going to freak out. Don't make me go, Cage. All right, you'll be gone in 60 seconds.
No instruction manual, by the way, for this one.
Okay, I'm going to turn...
Looks like you're going up. You're doing good. You're staying above the clouds.
Right.
This was my weakness. Was
What?
thunderstorm? What's happening?
I don't know.
Looks...
I'm scared. I'm intimidated by... Okay, I should follow the map.
The map?
Pull out...
What map?
Hey, there we go.
Something. What is that? It's a UFO. Shoot it. It's the visitors.
Ah! Come on, controller. Come on, controls. What
happened?
What? I didn't...
Let's drop a bomb, I guess. Bomb
I
time.
thought I just would shoot the guy.
Why don't they make a game called Joker of Jokers? Because I'd play that. It'd be about Joker from the Batmans.
That'd be cool. Joker having his own game?
Okay, Ace of Aces. Meh, I don't care. Just because for the time it came out, there wasn't much you could do with that. Piloting an airplane or any aircraft, whichever, on an Atari.
Not a lot of button options there.
No, so sorry about that game. That's why I don't really care about you.
I'm gonna rate Ace of Aces trash.
But I did
as well, just because trash without the instructions anyway. But
yeah.
Flight simulator games in general on the Atari just really aren't my cup of tea. I don't feel like they really make any sense because there's just too much. They're too involved. There's too many buttons you need. It should just be on a computer. Doesn't really suit the console with
Hard to tell. I haven't played that many of them. I just know about. There was Top Gun on the Nintendo that I saw on AVGN, and that seemed just as frustrating.
Yeah, Top Gun's hard, but at least Top Gun you could actually fly the plane.
Yeah, okay, you know what? It sucks.
Landing is what's hard in Top Gun.
It sucks. Okay, Ace of Ace sucks. Okay, even when you want to look around, you can't even tell where you're going. You just see clouds.
Yeah, I don't know the controls at all. Like at one point when I was doing a mission, I just started looking out the window, and I don't know why that happened.
Yeah, I just saw on the where you could see your altitude and what your direction your plane's going. Oh, okay, it's tilting up this way. I guess that means I'm turning. Okay, and then there's the plane coming at me, and you want to get that crosshair right on him. Was
too hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ace of Aces is trash.
Now, one bad guy.
Mean 18 Golf.
It's a lot better.
What would you rate it on the scale?
I'd say it's solid. You can keep playing that and get into it. I liked how it worked.
Mean 18 is fun. I'm a fan of golf games on both computer and consoles, but I would say...
I like it better in the arcade.
Yeah, with the trackball.
Yeah.
But, I'm going to rate Mean 18... I want to put it in between meh and solid. I think I'll go more towards solid, because I could play it myself for quite some time. But, there's a lot of little things in it that just irritate me.
Wind?
Not so much that. It's just that bar on the side that tells you how far you're hitting the ball. There's no way to tell what that actually translates into when you hit the ball.
Yeah, you can't tell if you're on an incline or not. It's
or even how far it is, because it's different for where you are on the course.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll rate it a solid just because I know personally I could play it. Plus, I really have to justify the money I spent to get this game, because it was one of the most expensive Atari 7800 carts that I've purchased.
How much?
$50, which is too much.
That's how much it cost when it first came out.
It's probably less than. It's probably $20 when this game came out. Because this game came out in 1989, which was towards the end of Atari. I think they stopped making games for 7800 in 91. But yeah, so solid. Ace of Aces is trash from both of us.
Yeah.
And Mean 18 is solid from both of us. And now I'm going to show Chris Ninja Golf, because it's a much more fun golf game. So, thanks, Phil, and next time. See you next time.
Next time, right.
Righteous.
Thank you, guys. Ace of Aces is not a pick-up and play game. That is for sure. When I heard that you're going to pick it up and just try and pick up and play it without knowing what was going on, I was like, just wait until they accidentally switch views and look at the Bombay doors or look at the windows, and that sounds like exactly what had happened. So yeah, if you just try and pick up and play Ace of Aces having no idea what's going on, you are going to call it trash. I can predict that fairly easily. And as far as Mean 18 Golf, when it came out, I'm going to guess it probably cost more around $25, $30. I think the top tier Atari 7800 games were $30. Now, Jack Tramiel was known for being a budget guy, so $30 was pretty much the limit. Maybe there were some that were $35, but $30 was the limit. Lesser games would be $20. And Mean 18 Golf seems like a game that would have been $30 when it came out. So, but $50 is not that bad for the cartridge, because you probably could get more for it if you sold it just because of its rarity. I think it can go for as much as $100 just a loose cartridge. Well, maybe more about 80. Tank Command could be the $100 game, but still $50 is not terrible for it. But I really enjoyed that. That was it's really cool to hear you guys kind of banter and talk about it, and I look forward to future submissions as well. All right, guess what? It's time for another episode of the new host of the Atari Links Game by Game podcast, Christian in the Christian Chronicles. Christian, the floor is yours.
Welcome, Christian, host of the Atari Links Game by Game podcast, to the random challenge segment of your audio submission. Name all officially released Atari 7800 games.
Edit. No, it is 7,800. This woman is getting on my nerves.
There's ball blazer centipede, food fight is the best. Hat trick and title match, put my patience to the test. Rampage and Toppler have the same goal in mind. While Xevious and Winter Games will make this whole thing rhyme. Miss Pac-Man so fun, Dig Dug is too. Crack-a-Man and Choplifter, one-on-one are few. But for Grodica, unfortunately the same just isn't true. Thank God there's Joss and Dig Dug to help me make it through. Donkey Kong and Jr., breathing monkeys right on in. While Mario and his bro try to go for the win. Dark Chambers is like Gauntlet, except for it's not. Desert Falcon and Fight Night Basketball for a spot. Jungle Dragon and Crossbow script their way right through. While F-18 and Asteroids joining with them too. 32 and 1 hangs with Jinx's old pal. Though he'd rather chill with Robotron as NTSCL. Kung Fu Master dressed up easy, ace of aces, wall barnyard blaster, runs me and brigade. Impossible mission makes you wonder if it's true. But Akari warriors would help us stop the blues. Mean 18 ultimate golf makes us hard to ride. But motorcycle and xenophone can help me sleep at night. Touchdown football switching the summer games are here. While Planners, Masters, and Dental will make a party cheer. Ninja Golf and Meltdown, hang out with the Scrapyard Dog. While Midnight Mutants play Galaga by the bog. Ski and take command, put Froggo in right here. While Rose and Super Huey pushing at the rear. Matt Mania Challenge is a mech game, and Fatal Run will have to work to get the Hall of Fame. And I know not all of my facts are 100% true, but Super Skateboard and Fatal Run will help complete the crew. That's all the games that there are, I hope. Alright, so to explain the little skit that took up the beginning of my topic today, I'm almost positive that it was you, Phil, who said this, but I went back and I listened to a bunch of the episodes trying to figure out where it might have been, but I would have sworn somewhere one of the Atari podcasters said that it would be cool if someone went back and took all of the games and turned it into the song from the Animaniacs or something similar. And I'm almost positive it wasn't Ferg, because 700 games wouldn't fit into that song. I had trouble fitting 70-something games. Couldn't have been, I doubt it was Greg who said something about that with the SNES, so I think it was you. If you know for a fact, you could go ahead and clarify for me. That'd be awesome. But other than that, I just thought I'd throw that in there. I was kind of thinking of something clever to do and just kind of thought of it when I was just sitting here. And so I wrote up the lyrics, and there's a couple of mistakes, and not all of the facts, like I said, are 100% true. And I'm not the best at the high ranges, so I had to flip down in some parts. But, it was all in good fun. I'm not going to be trying out for American Idol with that. So, just a little bit of fun, cooked some lyrics together and threw it all in, and then just kind of saw what happened. But that should be every game. I went through a list and checked off every game, so that should be every officially released game. Enough of that. I've talked way too long about that. Actually, to get onto your games now. So I'm actually, for once, not behind. It's kind of a miracle, actually. I'm a little shocked. I wanted to go ahead and start with the first game that I actually had, and this is the game that I was actually able to get on cartridge, and that's Ace of Aces. Ace of Aces is really, really fun. Now, when I say that, you need to realize that it's not going to be fun for everybody. It's not fun in the same way that Mario Brothers or Centipede or any of those other games are fun. It's fun in its own respect. It's a difficult game. It's fairly well laid out. It has a lot of interesting details to it. And probably for the same reason I like F-18 Hornet so much, I feel like this game is even better. F-18 Hornet was very good, don't get me wrong. F-18 Hornet had a nice landscape that was all three-dimensionally rendered, or at least faux three-dimensionally rendered. And this game uses very similar tactics, but I feel like it comes off graphically less impressive, but accomplishes more because of that. And when I say graphically less impressive, it's trying to be less ambitious with everything it's trying to display. For example, the wings, really the only animation when you're looking at the wings is the propeller spinning. The clouds really don't move a whole lot unless you're turning. The bay doors don't really show anything unless, if you're in the clouds especially, obviously. And I like being able to customize the exact loadout of everything I want to bring, how many missiles, how many bombs. it's just, there's a lot of depth to it, and I really, 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 really respect that. This is going to be in the same category of F-18. This is not going to be a game for everybody. I'm okay with a slow and methodical game as long as it is well thought out and well executed and controls well. And I feel like this did all of those things. It controlled well, was well executed, and is very, very, very fleshed out. I'm the kind of person who orders the same thing every day at the same restaurant, and I don't get bored with it. So it takes a really bad game for a game to feel drawn out or just overly boring. As long as there's some sort of engagement, I can usually grasp onto it. But this game in particular, I really liked. Ace of Aces is going to get a solid from me, and I'm glad that I was able to get a card of it. The next game, I had to play in emulation, and, I'm sure some people out here will actually have this cartridge, but what I did see, it was going for prices way above what I wanted, and none of them were for sale. That was all past sales, so I had to unfortunately skip out on this game. Nowhere local had one. I couldn't get one for a steal at a flea market or anything like that. So, I just had to kind of live with emulation. And it's kind of sad going from console to emulation again. But the game is also very good. This is a very good week, bye week for the 7800. The game is very good for a golf game in particular. I didn't expect a whole lot going into this. I kind of thought it was going to be even more boring than Ace of Aces was, but, I liked Ace of Aces. I didn't know if I was going to like golf. I think I spent more time on Mean 18 than I did on Ace of Aces, total playtime anyways. The one complaint I have with Mean 18 Golf is the clashing colors for the backgrounds, like the reds, and then you have the greens, and it looks kind of ugly, honestly, but it doesn't look graphically ugly. It looks ugly based off of color choices. I think the character models look pretty good. The animations are decent. I won't go as far as to say that they are amazing, but they're fairly decent. And I feel like it's the gameplay that really sells this game. The gameplay is what makes you want to play this. It is an easy to pick up, easy to learn, fun to get in and try to see how many holes you can get. It's not a hard game to beat. It's not hard to beat the preset scores or anything. But what is challenging and what is a lot of fun, if you do like that extra challenge, is trying to go for hole-in-ones or eagles or birdies on every single hole. And that was, for me, a lot of fun. I played through everything, got pars, barely made it through, and then came around the next time and just tried to see, okay, how good can I do these shots? And I would keep going, and I think I did those holes, God, a bunch of times. I kept going through them, so that was actually why I'm up at almost 11 right now doing this recording, because I was playing more Mean 18 Golf before going in here, and then I said, oh, that's right, I have a little short to submit. So this submission's already 9 minutes. I guess I have to give my review for Mean 18 Golf. I'm going to give it a solid. I'm not going to give either of these games Hall of Fame. I feel like they're really good games. It's a really good bye week for the 7800. If you don't have either of these games, at least try Ace of Aces, on emulation, or definitely get Mean 18 Golf on emulation. That's a great game, and, an emulator is free. So go ahead, try it out, play it. It's a good game. That's pretty much it, though. Hope you guys enjoy life and are enjoying your 7800s. And as always, take it easy and happy retro gaming.
Oh my goodness, Christian. Yes, that was me. I forget which episode it was on. It was a few episodes back. It was at the very tail end of the episode, and I did suggest that and tried to pull a miniature version of it, thus proving that the Phil effect is real, where my mediocrity causes others to rise above and beyond. That was amazing. Listen, hey, S1500 over at Atari Age, if you don't know who S1500 is, he started this amazingly long thread called Too Worthy Podcast, as is now in like its 10 kajillionth page, where they just keep talking about podcasts. It's a great place to go to if you want to find out about podcasts. but I think he does something called Potty Awards, like podcast. I don't mean like, ooh, good job, little Johnny. You went, you went pee-pee on the potty. You get a potty award. No, not like that, like a D, not a T. So anyway, he does these things for podcast of the year, for new podcasts or whatever. Hey, S1500, first of all, I heard you like mentioned, so consider yourself shout outed. I'm sorry, Paul, mentioned officially. And don't worry, I will never mention that. I know what it's like not to want certain games mentioned, so I'll never mention that. How should I say it? The Last Dream game. I'll never bring that one up. But if you ever think about doing a Potty Award for Best Audio Submission, I got your nominee right here. That just blew my mind. I'll be honest with you, Christian. I wasn't fully paying attention to you when you were talking about the games because I was still thinking about the song. That's amazing. And the lyrics you did on that and just cramming it all in. I don't know if you missed any. I was too entertained by it. That was great. Oh, my goodness. That was great. But yeah, Mean 18 Golf, I had a similar situation with you as far as Mean 18, where I just kept playing it more than I thought I would. I actually was recording video for it, and my video recording came out bad. I was like, oh man, I have to play it again. But then I was like, you know what? I'm glad I can play it again. And I was very happy to do that. So Christian, that was absolutely amazing. Now y'all gotta go see his Atari. Well, check out, listen, I guess you can't see it. Well, you could look at it while you listen to it, a picture or something, whatever. Go check out the Atari Links Game by Game podcast. Great job, Christian. All right, now it's time for everybody's favorite part, except for today. That was amazing. It's time for Shinto Says. Wait a minute, where's Shinto? Shinto, where are you? I didn't get any voice. What happened to Shinto? I don't have anything.
He got stuck in a time rift, but he should be back soon. But I did get a replacement. While searching for Shinto, I was able to connect with the real Ferg. So here is a catch-up edition of the Ferg Files.
Hey Phil, it's Ferg here, and this is a little segment I'm calling Catch Up! So I have a lot of games to go through here, so I'll try to make it as quick as possible. Let's start with the absolute games first. Okay, first we'll do F-18 Hornet. As you know, I don't care about flight simulators. Life is too short to invest time into games that you don't like. The only thing I really have to say about the gameplay is that I don't like using console switches for in-game actions, I guess. I have to do that with a couple of Atari games, and it's not a whole lot of fun. So the boxes are nice. They're huge. I'm not sure why they're so big. I like the artwork. I think Greg says that a lot about the games that he doesn't like. I was thinking about this, why I don't like these games. I think Rob O'Hara said when it was either a Fishing Derby episode I did or the Sneak and Peek episode that he doesn't want to play video games of things he can do in real life. And I agree with that. I guess I could, if I took enough flight school or whatever, fly an actual plane, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it in real life, and I don't want to do it in video game life. So that's a long-winded way of saying I don't like this game, but I'm going to give it a meh. I don't like it, but it looks good. Take that for what you will. So the other absolute game was Pete Rose Baseball that you covered. I really enjoyed this game. I thought it moved pretty fast compared to other games of the era, other baseball games of the era, except, of course, the home run, which I think you mentioned in the show. And I'm also curious why they only showed a partial view of the diamond when you're rounding the bases on a home run. That seemed kind of weird. I thought the computer opponent was extremely fair. Baseball games, you can go either way with computer opponents. I think on the Real Sports Baseball that you did, I think that was pretty much a computer blowout in that game. The sound, of course, is horrible. I just wish they had put the Pokey chip in the system. I do enjoy baseball video games as long as they're not too difficult, I guess. I know I just said that I don't want to play games of things I can do in real life, but I can't play baseball in real life. There's no way. Not at this point in my life. But I'm going to give Pete Rose Baseball a solid. Alright, since I'm the part number guy, I'm going to go in part number order here. Let's see, we left off at Midnight Magic, which was CX7835. CX7836 is cracked. This is a weird game. I could not get the catching eggs thing together. The reticle on the screen seemed to be out of control. That should have been a gun game, and they should have had a gun on the 7800, like I mentioned in my last submission. This looks a lot better than the 2600 prototype, but I would actually rather play the 2600 prototype. The controller is a lot easier, and I was actually able to catch some eggs in that game. Like I said, it's a weird game. I'm going to give this one a meh. So CX7837 is Dark Chambers. I really enjoyed this game. As you mentioned in your episode, it originated in the game Dandy and eventually became the game Gauntlet. I really like how the enemies regress, if I'm using that word correctly, into lesser enemies. So you know how many shots you need to take to shoot them. But I guess you'll get used to that after a while. This is available on the 2600 also, it's a very slow version. This was a nicely paced version. It's a little weird sometimes because I'm so used to Gauntlet and I have to shoot stuff in this game that I would normally try to pick up in Gauntlet, like the blue bottle. It reminds me of the potion bottle in Gauntlet, and of course the heart. From playing all those Nintendo games, Zelda and I guess Castlevania, I think they have hearts too. You want to pick up hearts, but that has absolutely nothing to do with single-player games, which is kind of strange to me. The lack of background music is disappointing, of course. I would rather play this than play NES Gauntlet, even though Atari did NES Gauntlet, and I'll give Dark Chambers a solid rating. Next up is CX7838, which is Commando, which I already talked about in the last episode. CX7839 is called Atari Team Wrestling. This was a rumored game. There is not much to tell about most of these games I'm going to talk about. It's on the list, and they think it was turned into Mat Mania later on. CX7840 is a game called Thunder Fox, again on the rumor mill. There's a game called Thunder Fox that Taito released in arcades in 1990. I don't know if that is this or not. It seems like 1990, arcade game released in 1990 might be a little bit too late for the 7800. I'm not really sure what the timeline is, but there's nothing else I could find out about Thunder Fox. CX7841 is chess, again in the rumor mill game. It's chess, I guess. CX7842 is Sprint Master, also could have been known as Sprint 88. This was actually released on the 2600, so I have to assume that it was a port of that game for the 7800. And Sprint Master on the 2600 is pretty good. It's a single-screen racing game, which is a lot like Indy 500. CX7843 is Super Soccer, another rumor mill game. I don't think there are any soccer games on the 7800, which is no great loss in my opinion. This would have filled that void, but unfortunately it did not come out, and there's nothing else that I know about it. CX7844 is Crossbow, which I talked about last time. And the last one is CX7845 F-16 Falcon, which is a rumor mill game. Thank goodness that never came out. All right, on to today's games. Ace of Aces, CX7846. This is a little bit more arcadey than F-18 was, but for me it was a little too slow to move around and too choppy. I'm not sure what was going on with the cloud line there. It looked kind of like a something you'd see in a local theater production with the clouds that move back and forth, or the water. But of course, this is a flying game, and I'm giving it a map. Mean 18 Ultimate Golf, CX7847. I usually like golf games. This one really annoyed me for some reason. I'm used to the meter when you're hitting a golf ball, but normally you just have to hit the button one time on the meter, not 3 times, which I didn't realize at first. I also didn't like how you couldn't always see the slope of the green. That cost me a lot of putting. I definitely have to spend more time with this to get used to the play mechanics. Maybe I would like it a little bit more, but I'd have to give this one a meh right now. I'm sorry I don't have really much to say about these games. I am looking forward to your next episode, which the games are more my speed, Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. I really enjoyed those games in the arcade, and I look forward to playing them on the 7800. So thank you, Phil, for all you do. If you want to listen to more of me for some reason, you can check out the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast. And I'm also on Atari Visions and Please Stand By. So thank you, Phil. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
This just in, next week's episode the next episode is going to be changed. Instead of doing Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., we will be dedicating the entire episode to Tomcat F-14. No, I'm just kidding, man. Hey, Ferg, I wonder what you would think of the games Animal Crossing and Harvest Moon. Those are 2 games where it's like all you do is like menial chores and farm labor, yet for some reason I've enjoyed them, but I'm guessing that you probably wouldn't, since you're just pulling weeds and going fishing and milking cows and stuff like that. But yeah, I could totally understand that thinking. It's weird how some games, they take the mundane and they try and make it entertaining, or something that you could do in real life. You know, how many how many kids nowadays can't even dribble a basketball yet can play the latest NBA 2K game, right? So very interesting thinking. I can understand there. As far as the Gauntlet, I was surprised to hear that you like Dark Chambers more than Gauntlet, and that'll be interesting too, because I know Dark Chambers for the 2600 is going to be way down the list, but it'll be interesting to hear what you think of that version compared to the 1700 version, because I think maybe we might be opposite, but I actually like the 2600 version a little bit more than 7800 version, and it kind of reminded me of the game Adventure, which I know you like, and I was surprised that you weren't used to the 3-click method of golf games, because I guess maybe because I grew up on like PGA Tour on the Sega Genesis, it's second nature to me almost. So surprised that you were just used to 1-click games. Maybe that's because the earlier titles, you basically did the 1-click. But even I think NES Golf does the 3-click method. So what else did I want to say? Where did you get that list of the prototypes? Because my list is incomplete. If you could let me know, I would totally appreciate that. Oh, Thunder Fox. Yeah, there was an arcade game, Thunder Fox, but this Thunder Fox was not that. It was, because that would be, like Back to the Future stuff, time traveling thing, and I've done enough of that recently. This Thunder Fox, I found out at Atari Age, there's a Thunder Fox for the Atari XE that it doesn't look like it ever got officially released, at least not in the States, but it's a shooter, left to right, horizontal screen shooter. Scrolling shooter, that's what it looks like based on the back of the box. I couldn't see any screenshots or anything like that. So that's what Thunder Fox was. And I think it might have been an original game. I'm not entirely sure on that. And I think that's everything. So thanks so much for the catch up. I really, really, really appreciate that. It was definitely cool to hear. And coming up next on the next episode is going to be Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. Now, I told some of you guys this, I think, in a previous episode, but I need to take an episode off. I'm going to keep first things first. Got some family flying in. I'm not going to be able to do any recording. I don't think at all, basically. So I'm like stockpiling No Swear Gamer episodes for that as well, because I won't be able to do any recording, basically. So I might be doing some, text submission to put some podcast during this time. But so I'm going to take a 4-week break, basically. I'm bi-weekly every 2 weeks, and I'm just going to pick up where the next episode would have been. So I'm just skipping one scheduled episode, if you think of it like that. But that will give you time. I know some of you said, man, it feels like we're flying through the library. Well, now you got some time. Maybe slow down, catch up on games that we haven't covered. Work on that audio submission you've been meaning to send in. So next episode, which will be in 4 weeks, will be Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. If you want to play ahead, after that comes Mario Brothers and Fight Night. And then after that, I believe is going to be Double Dragon and Rampage. So some interesting titles that I hope to hear some feedback on as well. And remember, if you send in text or audio submissions, you get entered into a contest. I have a Seagull 78 adapter, which I will be giving away again, a second one. By the way, David, you should be getting yours soon. Let me know what you think of it when you start putting it into effect. If you got Sega Genesis controllers, I don't even know if you have those, so hopefully you do. But let me know what you think of that adapter. And don't forget, you can also check out my No Swear Gamer video show on YouTube. Let's see, what did I put up recently? See, Christian said, I don't know if it was you, if you remember, if you did that. I don't remember what I did last week, so it's hard for me to remember. So let's see, what did I post over recently at the No Swear Gamer? I did reviews of Bugs and Journey Escape for the Atari 2600, which will be on Ferg's show next week. Also did reviews of Pete Rose Baseball, both for 2600 and 7800 individually. I got a whole bunch of this. I got this amazing lot of red and silver label Atari 2600 games. And I did an unboxing, and that was just a really cool lot that I got from Vector Gamer, if you know who he is. And I did a review of River Raid and F-18 Hornet, which I think was mentioned, and Dig Dug on the 2600, and I also published some other ones like Robotron on the 7800. I finally did a review on that, and Space Football 1-on-1 for the Super Nintendo, which was like Ball Blazer on the Super Nintendo, and I think I mentioned that during the Ball Blazer episode. So go ahead and check out the No Swear Gamer on YouTube. You can follow me as the No Swear Gamer on Twitter and on Facebook, and I also have a separate page on Facebook just for the 7800 Game by Game podcast as well. If you're interested in Game by Game podcast, go to Shinto's site, gamebygamepodcast.com. He has listing of all various types of Game by Game podcasts for various systems. Atari-wise, you can find the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast links there, Player Missile, which was mentioned earlier, 5200 Super Podcast, my show, the Atari XE, the Atari Lynx, and the Atari Jaguar podcasts are all listed there as well. And other systems as well, like the Channel F files for the Fairchild F, or the Intellivisionaries, or Two Dudes in a Nest, all over there. And he even has a site where you can find out what systems are not on. I forget what that one is on, but I think there's a link somewhere on that. But go to gamebygamepodcast.com and check that out. I'm a member of the Retro Junkies Network. Go check out some Retro Junkies show like the Genesis Gems and Two Dudes in a Nest, and of course Ferg's show, and many other great shows as well. And I think that just about wraps it up. So enjoy the 4-week break. Play some Atari 7800, get some submissions in, play some Donkey Kong Jr. I think it's going to be a great episode to talk about that. And remember, guys, games are fun, but always keep first things first. I will talk to you guys later.
You have been listening to the Atari Pro System Procast, established 2015. We are members of the Retro Junkies Network. I think I want to get a job cleaning mirrors. It's something I could really see myself doing.
It was you starting the whole Back in the Ferg thing, because he's saying that now how all the other podcasts are very conscious about saying, the forbidden phrase.
Mm-hmm. We have no problem saying Mr. Ferg.
No. Mr. Ferg, 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 Mr. Ferg.